Hi everyone, and welcome to the second part of my attempt at an Emerald Kaizo hardcore Nuzlocke. Last time we made our way through the early game, beating Roxanne, Brawley and Watson, and we managed to do all of that with just one death, Sunflora. But now we're in the official mid game, and things are about to heat up. We got a difficult selection of gym battles in front of us, and an insanely difficult fight against Maxie. Anyway, we make our way to Flannery Town, where along the way I catch a Numel and a Ponyta. Both are semi-decent as they can both counter other fire types pretty well, but in the fiery path I would have liked to see a Shell armor Torkoal instead. Moving on to the Ashy route, there are a bunch of trainers to face. Luckily there's this grandma here that heals your Pokemon, but sadly there's no PC in the area, so that means that we need to do a lot of backtracking. But first let's get our encounter here. Route 113 has a bunch of decent encounters, but we ended up finding a Gloom. Honestly not the worst. Gloom and Vileplume have Chlorophyll, which will be very helpful in the Magma hideout. After taking on other trainers, we need to face Red again. Red 2 can be pretty difficult, and here's how it went. Red starts with his signature Pikachu, and we send out Donphan. Pikachu still has Surf, but he prioritizes Sing, so if you just equip a Chesterberry on Donphan, we can get off a free Mudshot for the kill. This baits in Blastoise, who is especially scary with his Mirror Coat. We bring in Lantern, who is put to sleep, but he too has a Chesterberry to wake him up. I then confuse the Blastoise to minimize its chances of hitting Mirror Coat, and then I go for Shockwave. Blastoise pulls through though, and hits a Mirror Coat, but we manage to live. I then swap over to Crawdom and hit a Body Slam. Two more take it out and in comes Espeon. I swap into Fortress, who is a hard counter to Espeon. Two Signal Beams later and he's down. With Fortress out, we obviously bait in Charizard and a Fire move, so we make the switch into Gyarados. This gets off an Intimidate to lower its Rock Slide damage, and we then swap into Donphan to hit our own Rock Slide. This takes it out and this brings in Venusaur. So I bring in our newly acquired Rapidash and Heatwave it twice. Venusaur did miss a Sleep Powder, but we're equipped with a Chesterberry, so that really wouldn't have mattered anyway. Now last up is Snorlax, and he's actually quite scary. He has Curse to boost his attack, Rest and Snore to do massive damage, and Earthquake. Luckily Gyarados is the perfect counter here. It's immune to Earthquake and it has Intimidate to lower its attack. The AI here messes up a bit by setting up curses until it's at +6 at something. But since curse ups 2 stats instead of just 1 stat, and Gyarados' Intimidate will lower the other one, Snorlax will stop cursing after he's at +6 defense, while he'll still be at -6 attack. We do a bunch of switching in and out to bait the Earthquakes until Snorlax runs out of Rest and Earthquake PP. We then chip away with Gyarados' Dragon Rage until it goes down. This opens up the path to Flannery Town, where you can get a new encounter. There really aren't that many great encounters here, with only Aron and maybe Sudowoodo being somewhat decent. Aron is actually fantastic by the way, but we ended up finding a Persian, which is not really that good. On Route 114 we can also get a new encounter, and since we already have a Tentacle, we can fish for a guaranteed Quillfish here. Quillfish is absolutely amazing in this game. It gets Gunk Shot, it has Swift Swim ability and Explosion, and all are going to be super useful in this run. It's the perfect counter to Ludicolo's, and an Explosion Mon is always good to have. We then have to take on a large team Magma Gauntlet with a whole bunch of tough trainers. A common theme you'll find with the evil teams is that they all have really bad items. Quick Claws for priority moves, Focus Bands to live on 1 HP, or Bright Powders for us to just miss our moves straight up. These are all items that are commonly found on the evil team's Pokemon. Though with good planning you can get through here without any casualties. And although the Gauntlet is already a challenge in and of itself, the worst is yet to come. Mount Chimney is home to 2 boss battles, one against Magma admin Tabitha and the other against Maxie himself. These are 2 super difficult battles, and here's how they went. Tabitha opens with Dodrio, but we have a speedy electric type with Electrode. I wild charge it for the one shot and in comes Aggron. I swap into Hariyama and take an Earthquake. We can barely live another crit Earthquake now, but we outspeed and one shot it with Cross Chop. In comes Manectric, so I bring in Donphan on the Thunderbolt. I then hit a crit Mud Shot to Oko the Manectric as well. With Donphan out, Weezing comes in, so I swap into Xatu. I hit up Psychic for massive damage as Weezing hits a Gunk Shot and poisons us. Another Psychic takes it out, bringing in Flygon. But since we're on low HP, Flygon will go for a random move here. I swap into Dewgong and luckily it went for Signal Beam. So next turn we can easily live a Rock Slide and one-shot it with Aurora Beam. Last up is Arcanine and he will Wild Charge our Dewgong. So I swap into Donphan, who's immune to Wild Charge, and then swap into Rapidash on the Overheat. I hit a Drill Run as Arcanine gets us into the red with Extreme Speed. So I need to switch now as another Extreme Speed will kill us. I go into Hariyama to get off a fake out, but it doesn't quite kill. I then bring in Electrode, but he's hit into the red as well. I know Electrode outspeeds, but Arcanine will just go for extreme speed, and I really have no other option. I need to let Electrode go. This is the second death of the run, but a necessary one, as Hariyama can now come in freely and take it out with another fake out. This battle went smoothly, but I should have planned better for the Arcanine. Maybe a Camerupt, for example, would have been a much better counter, but that's too late now. Rest in peace Electrode, you did an amazing job. But that wasn't even the worst. Maxie is much tougher, and that is immediately apparent from his lead, a Registeel. Before the 4th gym, we face a legendary. Yep. Against this Registeel, I open with a pre-burnt Hariyama. I burned him so it activates his Guts ability, allowing us to one-shot it with Cross Chop. Yeah, that was kind of anticlimactic, as he just went down to one move. But honestly, the rest of his team is much scarier than the Steel monster. With Hari out, we bait in Claydol. Now Claydol is perfectly countered by Gara. We just need to get lucky and not have an Omni boost on us, but even then, I'm pretty sure you can still win easily. We pivot through Crawdaunt on the Psychic and then bring in Gyarados on the Signal Beam, minimizing damage on Gyarados. We then hit 2 Waterfalls, leaving Claydol on a Sliver. A third one takes it out, leaving us at about the 3rd HP. This brings in Alakazam, as it has Thunder Punch. Now, Alakazam is probably the scariest mon he has, but he's doable. We go into Lantern to eat up the Thunder Punch, and due to Full Absorb, Alakazam will not go for another Thunder Punch on us again. The highest damaging move it now has is Psychic, and we have a Crawdaunt who's immune to that as well. Now, this part is a little sketchy, as we need to dodge a roll. Crawdaunt can come in freely on the Psychic, but after that Alakazam outspeeds and goes for Thunder Punch. Now 2 out of the 16 rolls will kill us, but we're left on just 9 HP, after which we fire off an X-Scissors for the one shot. In comes Dusclops, who will also go for a random move, so I go into Hariyama. He has a Guts boosted Shadow Punch, which does good damage, and after 2 the Dusclops goes down. Dusclops is super buffed in this game, so this is a good W. Crobat now comes in and he too will go for a random move. Still, I bring in Lantern, but he comes in on an Air Slash, so that's fine. We then fire off a Shockwave, but Crobat hits us hard with Giga Drain. For some reason, I decided to stay in and go for another Shockwave, but for some reason, Maxie's Crobat goes for Poison Fang. Now this does get us all the way down to 3 HP, and it also poisons us. But this here is exactly why I equipped Lantern with a Pecha Berry. For the exact reason that Poison Fang may poison us, I gave him a Pecha Berry, so we are now healed off, and this saves him. You really need to take into account all of these small tiny variables, like Poison Fang poisoning us and killing us. Anyway, Shockwave then finishes off the Crobat, leaving only a buffed Houndoom. I need to make a switch, but I'm not really sure what the best move is. So I go back to my damage calc screen, and this here is what Emerald Kaizo is really about. Calculating the damage outputs and seeing what the best move is. I ultimately came to the decision to switch into Persian. He switches in on a Crunch, which did massive damage and lowered our special defense, but Persian's job here was to be a sec anyway. I go for maximum damage by going for Double Edge, and a crit would actually kill Houndoom here, but he doesn't. Even if he did crit, the recoil damage would have taken him out anyway, so rest in peace Persian. And now bring in my actual Houndoom counter, my Rapidash, who can now hit a Drill Run for the one shot, winning us our Maxi battle. To be fair, watching these battles may make it look slightly easier, but these sort of battles require a ton of planning beforehand. But now that Maxie is out, we can make our way to Mirage Tower, where we need to face Flannery. But before we do that though, we need to make our way through the Jagged Path. And there are a few more trainers here. We beat them easily and also find our new encounter here, a Machoke. Honestly, Machamp really isn't all that great in this game, but he isn't the worst I guess. It's a decent fighting type, it has guts, and he can always be a sec later on. Arriving in Lava Ridge, we can get 2 more Pokemon. The first one is a Wynot egg, and even though we received the egg here, we can hatch it somewhere else where there's no encounters available. Something like Mount Chimney for example. If we hatch it here, it will count as a Mount Chimney encounter and not a Lava Ridge encounter. This leaves a little patch of grass in Lava Ridge open for another encounter for us. This is home to a lot of fire types like Growlithe, Quilava or Charmeleon, but we ended up finding a Flareon. But now it's time to prepare for Flannery. First we need to take on what is probably the most difficult set of gym trainers yet, as this gym has permanent sun and almost every single mon has Solar Beam. The sun and Solar Beam basically makes any ground, water or rock type Pokemon near useless. Now since I have a Puck Primeape, the real challenges for these gyms are the trainers. But really your best bet here is to go with your own fire types. Like Rapidash with Dual Run is amazing, Camerupt has Earthquake, Torkoal will know Earth Power, and even Macario and his Rock Slide will be great here. We ended up beating all the trainers and arrived at Flannery, and this is going to be easy. You're about to see why Puck Primeape is so amazing. We opened of course with Primeape and I pre-damaged him all the way down to 1 HP. This maximizes its reversal power and Flannery sends in Ninetales. We click reversal for an easy one shot. I also made sure to edge Primeape so that taking out Ninetales would get him a level up. This is required for other one shots. Flannery then sends in Charizard, who does not die to reversal, but he will just die to a simple Rock Slide. In comes Blaziken, so we click reversal again, and this brings in Arcanine. Now Arcanine is the only real problem here. He knows extreme speed, so that's what he'll go for. This would kill Primeape of course, so he's switching to Fortress. He eats up the extreme speed, but he also baits a fire type move. So we switch into Camerupt, which is hit for under half, and then we swap over to Gyarados. Gyarados baits a Wild Charge and this gives us a clean switch into Donphan. He then hits a critical hit Mud Shot, taking out the Arcanine. Now the next problem is that if we need to get Primeape back in, we need to sack something. So I bring in the very first Pokemon we caught, our Seaking, and let it go down. Rest in peace buddy. But his sacrifice was crucial, as Primeape can now come in freely, sweeping both Typhlosion and Castform. Beating Flannery normally isn't this easy, but she's definitely doable, and after beating her you can get access to some really cool new encounters. The desert area opens up and with it comes the Mirage Tower. Now if you delayed Rustboro City like I did, you can pick up a fossil here, but whatever you do, do not pick it up before you caught your Bagon here. On the top floor there is a 100% chance to find a Bagon, one of the most important Pokemon for this run. Repel your way to the top and catch yourself that Bagon. After that, I picked a Claw Fossil so you can revive it in Rustboro. Again, if you got the grass encounter in Rustboro, the fossil is off the table. But what isn't off the table is the desert encounter. I ended up finding a Diglett here who honestly isn't all that great, but it's a nice dupe for Victory Road at least. I would have preferred a Trapinch here as Flygon would be really cool. Other than that, there really isn't much more to do than to face Norman. His gym trainers can be pretty difficult, but luckily it works just like it did in normal Emerald. We only need to beat 3 of them to reach the gym leader. That's a huge relief compared to the many different gym leaders we need to face in the other gyms. Honestly, the best way to beat these trainers is to just look at your own selection of Pokemon and see what will be best for you. There are many different rooms like stall rooms and confusion rooms, and it really depends on your own encounters which rooms are best for you. Ultimately though, these trainers are annoying but manageable. Norman is a different story though. From here on out, every gym battle is going to be a double battle. This makes things significantly more difficult as there are a lot more variables you need to take into account. I ended up crafting a pretty solid Norman team, and here's how the battle went. Norman opens with Espeon and Slacking, and I send out a pre-damaged 1 HP Primeape and a pre-burned Guts boosted Hariyama. Espeon will go for skill swap to get rid of Slacking's Truant ability, but our Primeape will outspeed it, one-shotting it with a reversal. Hariyama's Guts boosted Shadow Punch and also one-shots the Espeon, giving us a fantastic head start. With my 2 fighting types out, we bait out Swallow and Snorlax, and this basically means that the battle is won. Snorlax once again has one of those rest movesets, where it literally cannot damage us if he's not asleep. So if we just focus on the Swallow side, this battle is basically a 2v1. Swallow sees a kill on both of my mons, so I need to swap both of them out. I bring in Donphan and our newly obtained Armaldo. I then go for a Head Smash and Crush Claw on the Swallow, but before he hit, Swallow hits a Sky Attack on Armaldo for half damage. We do take it out though, and this brings in Kangaskhan. I once again click for Head Smash on Donphan and swap Armaldo out for Kabutops. He's hit by Fake Out for minimal damage, while Head Smash gets the Kangaskhan below half. I then go for another Head Smash and a Water Pulse from Kabutops to take out the Kangaskhan, but Kabutops is left in the red. In comes Tauros and I go for a double switch. I bring in Gyarados to get an Intimidate off, and I bring in Hariyama. I go for a Waterfall with Gyarados and hit a Fake Out with Hariyama to maximize damage on Tauros and flinch it as well. We then double up with another Waterfall and a Force Bomb, taking out the Tauros. This only leaves Snorlax, and we're going for a similar strategy that we used against Red Snorlax. Although I quickly realized that there's a much easier and faster way. I have 2 fully powered fighting types, so I unleash Primeape and Hariyama. We go for Cross Chop and Reversal to take it to about a quarter of health, and after that we outspeed it, fire off the same moves again and take it out. This wins us our 5th badge and our first double battle gym badge. These double battles will ultimately come down to pivoting just right so that one Pokemon can get off 3 hits. But after beating Norman, we get access to Surf, and with that, we get access to a bunch more encounters. On Route 105, we fish up a Relican, and on Route 134, I fish up a Cedra. I then can also go to the new Mawal, where I find a Plusle, who is really not the best, but it'll do. It will get Encore, which is really nice, but I would have preferred to get a Magnetpool Magneton. And finally, we cross into the eastern section of Hoenn. Here we need to beat a bunch of trainers who honestly aren't all that bad. There's a focus band Shedinja here who can really screw you over if you get unlucky, but in the end, the road to the Weather Institute is relatively free. The Weather Institute is where our next evil team encounter will be, and this is the part where Sceptile really shines. You may have noticed how I really haven't been using Sceptile, and that is because I delayed its evolution. Up to this point, it has stayed a Grovyle because I delayed it to learn early Leaf Blade. Leaf Blade is such an overpowered move for the Weather Institute. Honestly, just look at some of these sweeps. Overall, the Weather Institute isn't all that bad, but there is a scary Wobbuffet here. I didn't have any Toxic or Will-O-Wisp mons out when it came in, and since he makes it so that you cannot switch, I had to deal with it with what was in. Luckily for us, Plusle was in, and what I did here was scout by going for Encore. It turned out that Wobbuffet was going for counter, which is perfect, so next turn we Encore his counter, which means he cannot go for Mirror Coat. This means he cannot fire back our special moves, so we hit him with a few signal beams to kill it. At the end of the Weather Institute we have another admin battle, against Shelley this time. I pre-damage our Sceptile so that he's in Overgrow range, and Shelley sends out Melodic. Since we're in Overgrow, a Leaf Blade will simply one-shot it. I also equipped him with a Citrus Berry, so that we are healed to the point where Lapras will most likely go for Ice Beam. This gives us a free switch into Crawdaunt, who then baits Thunderbolt, which gives us an easy swap into Machamp. Machamp also has Guts, so he's pre-burned, so that a cross chop will simply one-shot the Lapras. Hypno then comes in, and I know that he will go for Psychic, so we have a free swap into Crawdaunt. An X-Scissors then one-shots the Hypno, baiting in Medicham. Medicham will go for Brick Break here, so we go into Gyarados, who resists it, but also lowers its attack with another Intimidate. After that, we hit a Return and a Waterfall to take it out, and next up is Dragonite. But he's nicely checked by a Fortress of all things. We are paralyzed, but our Barry takes care of that, and after that we just need to hit 3 Flash Cannons for the kill. We did take out the Dragonite, but are left on 2 HP. Last up though is a super annoying Shuckle. This thing has everything it needs to end your run. It has Toxic, but also Rest to shake off any status that you put on it. I bring in Primeape as it has Seismic Toss, and that's one of the few moves that does fixed damage, which is actually perfect against a mon with such high defenses. Shuckle also starts to spam Protect and double teams as if he wasn't bad enough already, but luckily Primeape pulls through like the hero he is before things could get out of hand. If that Shuckle is at +6 evasion and toxic all your mons, you're in for a world of hurt. Anyway, after beating Shelley we get an insane reward, a Castform who is insanely buffed in this game. But right after beating Shelley we have another boss battle, against May this time. May opens with a Surfing Raichu, so we lead with Lantern. Raichu kindly sets up the rain for us, so our Bubble Beam does more damage. After a second Bubble Beam, May actually switches Raichu out for her Meganium, so I follow her lead and swap Lantern out for Fortress. 2 Signal Beams easily take care of it, and this brings in Raichu again. I want to play it safe, so I just swap back into Lantern, and Raichu misses his Thunder. This is actually kind of bad, as Thunder would have just healed us back to full, but our Bubble Beam does take care of it. Next up is Nidoqueen, who will go for an Earthquake, giving us a free switch into Xatu. Psychic then nearly kills it, as Thunder nearly kills us. Luckily we do outspeed, so next Psychic is a wrap, but a crit would have devastated Xatu. Next up is Clefable, so bring in Hariyama. He's hit by an Ice Beam, but a Fake Out and 2 Force Palms take out the Clefable. Last up is Blastoise, so I bring in Vileplume. Vileplume is hit by a Water Spout and then by an Ice Beam, and he also gets frozen. Yeah, so I need to switch, so I bring in Lantern, who gets off a Shockwave. Blastoise fires it right back at us with Mirror Coat, leaving us at literally 1 HP. My god. I need to switch again, so I go into Gardevoir. He's hit by a powerful Water Spout, but due to the recoil damage and us outspeeding it, we can hit a Psychic for the kill next turn. The battle started off great, but got way too close near the end. Anyway, when we arrive in Fort Tree City, we once again have access to some new encounters. First up is a patch of grass in the city itself, which houses a bunch of flying types. We find the fabled Swellow, which is probably the best thing here, but Swellow really isn't as useful in the late game as he was in the early game. Still, it's super solid to have. We then find a 1% Linoone, which is about the worst thing that could have happened here. Normally 1% encounters are super nice, but Linoone is arguably the worst thing here. We could have gotten a Scyther here, or even Absol would have been nice, but oh well. We then also find a Charmeleon in the Scorched Lab, which is great. Charmeleon is always good to have. But those are the new encounters for now. All that's left now is to face Winona. However, that will have to wait for the next part. This section of the game saw a lot more deaths, but considering the sheer number of boss fights, I am actually somewhat impressed. We beat 2 gym leaders, 2 admins, we beat May, we beat Red, and we beat Maxie. So I'd say we got off pretty good. But to be fair, the mons that we did lose weren't going to be that useful anyway. Electrode could have exploded somewhere, but his booms really aren't all that strong. Persian really wasn't anything more than Death Fodder anyway, and the same is true for Seeking. Anyway, we're in for a challenge in the next section. Winona is up first, but we need to beat some of her trainers, of which one is notorious for taking at least 1 or 2 of your Pokemon. In this section I'm especially proud of Primeape, of course. He really put his weight and then some. But anyway, I want to thank you all for watching and I hope to see you in the next part.